Hello there guys and welcome back to the channel. Now we are carrying on with our December ranking series. So twice a year I rank all the champions in the game basically by their classes, which class is the strongest, newest release champions ranked, and all that other stuff. Here's the full list of all the videos that are coming. And well, judging by the title, it seems that we have arrived at the tech class top 10. And this video definitely had me pulling my hair out. There are going to be some controversial takes and some very strong placements based on my opinions, which ultimately these lists are. These lists are a mixture of my own personal opinions together with the current game relevance and trends. And when ranking these champions, there are tons of things to consider. The most important thing I want you guys to keep in mind is the fact that these are ultimately my opinions. We do not have like official statistic about winning percentages, which champions get used most frequently, which champions are ranked, and so on and so forth. So, what that means is that there's always room for interpretation, and what we think of each champion will depend on which game modes we focus on, how hard we play, what is our play style, what is our skill level, what is our commitment level, and so on and so forth. There are a million different things, and two of us will never see everything exactly the same for exact same reasons. That said, tech class, I think, is going to be especially controversial because I realized that outside of top 5, there are about 12 champions competing for the last 5 spots, which all have a legitimate claim to be higher or lower on that list. I'm going to try and explain myself the best I can to you guys. There's one thing I want to acknowledge before I actually get into the, count-made part of it and we look at individual champions. And that is the fact that a significant portion of very potent tech champions are not released as 7 stars currently in the game. And that definitely affects the perception. Like, a great example here would be that, objectively speaking, Omega Sentinel is significantly better and more potent and more versatile champion than, let's say, Mysterio. However, we tend to see Mysterio more often when it comes to Alliance Ward or when it comes to Battlegrounds. That is the fact that he was one of the champions in the 7-star base pool. And that goes to a lot of tech champions. A lot of tech champions that could potentially get love from community don't, because people choose, let's say, in my opinion, slightly worse champions that are almost as good, but they exist as 7 stars because they want to future-proof their rosters. So I tried to leave the 7-star part out as much as possible. As I said before in one of the previous videos, I only kind of used it as a tiebreaker where I thought it's like really, really close. But for most part, still in these video series, I will not necessarily, completely condemn champions because they do not exist 7 stars. Because a lot of champions don't, and we still do invest in 6 stars, and ascended 6 stars are still very much so competitive, even at the highest levels of game. But that's changing, and we need to, think about it as well, and that has already altered which champions we tend to use more or invest more in. Right, so let's jump. Well, before we jump anywhere, we need to just ruin the entire video. Okay. Take a look at the old tech ranking. We have Nimrod, Ghost, Warlock, Future Antman, Omega Sentinel, Guardian, Shuri, Penny, Ultron, and SpiderMan spot number 10. That was the old ranking. And now let's move on to the new one. You saw nothing. Want to go over the honorable mentions that I definitely wanted to point out. A lot of tech champions, again, that, seem to be gaining traction. We do see here from time to time. And one of the first ones that I want to shout out is definitely Howard the Duck. We have seen some crazy things from the Quack Fu Master, be that in Battlegrounds, Necropolis, Alliance Wars, or everywhere else. And his buff seems to have been kind of a sleeper in a bit. And him existing as a 7-star obviously also has helped. And more and more people do use Howard the Duck, and his uses have kind of become more relevant for what we need him to do today because he's a domino counter. He doesn't rely on energy damage, which seemingly is kind of a big deal currently as well. And a few more things. Hulkbuster is regaining more and more popularity due to his existence as 7-star as well, and that has just highlighted how potent the champion can be, and Hulkbuster is actually one of my personal favorite tech champions. Mysterio, I already mentioned in this video. Mysterio, again, released as a 7-star, has gained significant popularity. People have rediscovered that he was actually one of the first proper domino counter in the game. And level 3 nuke strategy goes and works for him just fine, on top of him being a relatively solid defender as well. A champion that has fallen in stock for now is Penny Parker. And Penny Parker is just coming in the game as 7-star. I do expect to see a resurgence of Penny Parker in the near future because of the existence of 7-star again. But the ultimate reason why Penny Parker lost a lot of ground is because Kabam just immediately released quite a few champions that absolutely nuke and destroy her defensively. Therefore, her offensive capabilities, as good as they might be, are just, somewhat underrated at this point. And I do believe that will change when she becomes as a 7-star. Again, tech class, it seems that these dynamics of whether the champion is out or is not out as 7-star really do matter a lot. And her not being one, I think, is the reason why she slid so much down to a point where you hardly see her, to be honest. But 100% think we will see more of Penny Parker very, very soon. Starting January and so on and so forth. Right. So besides Penny Parker, also wanted to shout out Red Skull and Shocker. Both of these champions are freshly buffed. It's still kind of impossible to, judge their overall impact on the game and their value. Both of them are significantly better than they used to be. I personally kind of have a bit more faith in Red Skull, but who knows? Could be Shocker, the one that runs away with it and, is the more used and more popular meta champion. We already have started seeing some more of a Shocker in Battlegrounds as well with the current metas. Red Skull didn't get quite so lucky because of the energy resistance nodes, but I do think that overall there is a very good place in the game for Shocker and Red Skull, if things work out for them. So definitely, again, shout out to Shocker. And another champion that's soon to be out as a 7-star is Ultron. And Ultron, again, used to be towards the top of the tech list, kind of slid down. We'll see whether it releases a 7-star lets him catch up. And another champion I want to give a shout out to is Vision. Vision's definitely one of the more cult following type of champions, where there are a group of people who swear by her, who love her to bits, and who use her a lot. And then there's a large portion of community who don't really bother with her or run her. For whatever reason, she doesn't seem to have had a mainstream mass appeal, but she is effective and she can be very, very potent. So I was genuinely, considering getting her on the list as well here at some point. Right. So let's get to the actual top 10. And in spot number 10 at the moment, I'm putting in Iron Man because I think of all of the newer additions, Iron Man is one of those where he's been in the game now for a bit. We have seen him perform. He can be a very annoying defender. Much of what he does seems to function better than similar champion counterparts. Like the fact that he's a tech champion that gains armor ups, but at the same time manages to effectively, bypass much of nullify nodes and nullify stuff, and manages to bypass Mystic Dispersion from Mystic champions when his armor ups are expiring. That's kind of like huge and shows quite a bit of thoughtfulness in there. Obviously, that mutant destruction is quite potent there as well. Even though one of the biggest, changes to this rank up list is taking in consideration the fact that mutants are effectively irrelevant now in competitive modes, or very few of them are. As in past, it really mattered, how well you destroy the mutant class for tech champions. And now it matters significantly less because of how effective tech class is at destroying mutants in general. Basically see significantly less of them. There are like 3 relevant mutant defensive champions. Onslaught is obviously arriving to the game, and that is changing that, but we can't really judge that yet because Onslaught's still not properly come out as a champion in the game. But that's a definite difference in my view of tech class. If previously it was, more important how well a tech champion completely shuts down or destroys mutant class. Now it's undoubtable that that thing in particular has become less important. And what matters more for tech champions is how well they match with other classes, or how fast they are, on top of how well they handle like 2 or 3 specific mutant matchups, namely like Havoc, Domino, and Bishop. Right? And now Onslaught will be the 4th one. So Iron Man seems to do well there. He can do the Domino, he can do the Bishop, right? He can do the Havoc. He has plenty of mutant destruction abilities, as well as he matches fairly favorably, as I said, with some of the Mystic champions. He matches favorably with stuff like Killmonger. So ultimately, I'm not the biggest Iron Man expert. I have been reliably told that I'm quote-unquote sleeping on him, and I want to acknowledge that as I make this video. But based on the results that I have seen, based on people using him against me, based on the fact that he is frequently in the Battlegrounds decks already, even though many of the metas aren't particularly favorable to him, indicates to me that there is a very, very good chance that we're going to see significantly more of this guy. Obviously, we could be wrong, and as I said, I do believe that a lot of tech rankings will be changing up soon. Primarily, looking at whether the champions are or are not as 7 stars. That said, let's move on to spot number 9, which I'm currently giving to Lady Deathstrike, and she's kind of hanging in there by a thread. She's a champion I do have quite a lot of hope for, now that she is becoming more available also as a 7 star, and especially when she will eventually enter the base crystal pool. I do suspect and expect to see significantly more of her. Ultimately, people do complain about her being like ramp uppy or being too slow. I don't think that's necessarily an issue. As I said in my 2023 champion ranking, I think people have basically gotten a completely wrong idea about how it is to run and use Lady Deathstrike, and that could be part of the way she was advertised and presented to us, and how much of heavy emphasis was put on the fact that, you can't parry when you're in your ferocity, which effectively in 90+% of the fights is just irrelevant, because you can parry and play her like any regular champion, parry 5-hit combo, parry 5-hit combo, until you enter your ferocity mode, which is at around time you nearly reach level 3. And then you activate your level 2 and you get 2 parries, but those parries mixed in with access to a striker, and those parries mixed in with the fact that you will inevitably go punish opponents level 3s, means that you don't really end up needing more than those parries to begin with. And also the fact that, it's not the worst thing in the world if you end up, parrying some hits and lose your ferocity. It's not like your damage completely disappears at all. And ultimately her, conservative amounts of utility, I feel like it's just what, for most part, tech class needs. She has very solid access to heal block, a ton of debuffs. Even if you can't heal block the opponent by finishing combo with medium, you can basically shut off their healing with the Despair Mastery alone. As soon as you get heal block on, you effectively switch off all the mutant class abilities. She has a great failsafe and ability to eat special attacks to the face, and that actually basically netting you positive heal in some instances. Immunity to ability accuracy reduction. Plenty of other things that you'd expect in a tech champion. And I genuinely do believe that she's going to do well. She's fairly unique with the way her damage and attack works. And look forward to seeing how she does. It is perfectly viable and possible that with the release of more and more tech champions 7 stars, maybe she's going to slide down the list and move just out of it. At the moment, I still wholeheartedly believe that community has been overly harsh on the champion based on what she does. All right, let's move on. Spot number 8, and it's Guardian. Guardian has lost a step. Guardian has become somewhat less popular as more and more competition comes. However, he still has, relatively unique offerings for a tech champion, or at the very least rare. The stuff that he's resistant to, in between the bleed and all of the forms of energy damage, make him extremely versatile. And then just in itself, the fact that he's a tech champion that doesn't crit, has that armor buff and has that perfect parry on special attacks and can parry projectiles, has limited amounts of power control as well. do open him up for, again, a lot of matchups that do not necessarily mean that he's going to be used only against mutants. He does well against a ton of random champions that people would not expect him to do. And out of all of the top 10 champions, I think Guardian has one of the higher matchup lists that he can actually do well with his nuke. You know, you can go to level 3 and then level 2, and then you can nuke down, let's say, Killmonger, for instance. Which is not something a lot of people would expect with Guardian, with a very high HP remaining. And stuff like that does matter. And again, he definitely has lost a step in his popularity. And unfortunately, in case of Guardian, I don't think the fact that he's out as a 7-star will even help him that much. It's definitely helpful, but the high SIG requirement for 7-star champions at the moment unquestionably is, you know, unrealistic ask. Champions that require SIG 200 to access their full potential are kind of getting short end of the stick now. Luckily for Guardian, there's still a ton in his kit that he can be worth ranking up, even unawake, and you know, for specific people, or later on when the 6 tons do become available, he would be a legitimate option for them as well, at the very least for the tech ones, right? So we need to keep on moving. I don't want to keep you guys here for the entire day. We need to speak about Omega Sentinel. Omega Sentinel, again, is a champion that is kind of on the downslide. We do see less of her than we used to. But what, in my mind, still justifies placing Omega Sentinel as high as I have is the fact that, mainly when we are referencing the fact that we see less of her, that's primarily battlegrounds. Omega Sentinel is a champion that pops up as a relevant champion virtually everywhere else in the game. And, you know, that comes from her ability to bypass miss, access heal block reliably, immunity to nullify effects, and, you know, in general, her ability to access huge amounts of damage also in longer fights. I kind of expected to see more of her in Necropolis, which, you know, fair enough. Shuri kind of stole that spotlight, I think, for the most part. But, you know, she still has a very significant Alliance War presence, which, again, is one of the prominent game modes at the moment. And she still has decent Battlegrounds presence as well. Again, this is one of those situations that I literally mentioned at the beginning. I do think a lot of people have kind of like left her at rank 4 level at the moment, not necessarily rushing to take her to rank 5, because those same rank resources can be invested in 7-star, take to rank 2, and rank 2s are significantly more powerful. So, you know, we see more Mysterios over Omega Sentinel. We see more Hulkbusters and Howard the Ducks and other, you know, random good tech champions just because they exist as 7-star than we do with Omega Sentinel. And I feel like that will be an issue. Quite few tech champions moving forward as well. But ultimately, I think it is very tricky to deny the versatility and utility of her kit, on top of the fact that she, you know, again, is one of those champions that you often end up seeking for when more specific tasks are required. She just seems to be fitting a lot of challenges that BAM is cooking up for us, whether that is story content, whether that is Alliance War. And yeah, it is definitely going to be interesting to see where tech class moves from now. I am fully aware that, you know, unless she gets released as a 7-star until the next June rankings, I will have to move her down. No question about it. She might even disappear from this list, just like Penny got completely slid out of it, like several other champions have in the past. But I also sincerely believe that as soon as, and if she does launch out as 7-star, she will yet again be at the forefront of people's tech rank up options and tech choices, and we can see her pretty much everywhere. So yeah, it is definitely going to be very, very, very interesting to see what happens with tech class in general and Omega Sentinel more specifically. That is why this was such a hard video to make. a lot of the objectively best tech champions are losing popularity, even though, stat by stat, they are better. Like, if you have a rank 5 Meg Sentinel, and if you have a rank 5 6-star Mysterio, I don't think that anybody really questions the Meg Sentinel is the better champion. Problem is, you have a rank 2 7-star Mysterio. Don't have that with the Meg Sentinel. And the difference for a lot of these champions isn't that big. That, paired up with the people's desire to rank up the highest star level available, again, is leaving out a lot of amazing, champions for great, amazing, but just slightly less amazing champions. So yeah, we'll see what happens here. For sure. I understand that this is a fairly unique or interesting take on these things. Not everybody is going to agree with it, but that's what's my take. And that is what's going through my head. So let's move on. And I hate where I'm going now. I hate myself for doing this because the backstory here is very simple. Here is a very, very simple backstory. So I have a moderator on my channel. One of my, oldest remaining viewers from the time when I just started recording videos. He has always been a Stark Spider-Man sim. And because of him, I hate the champion. Because he never, ever, ever, ever shuts his mouth about it. I never was a major Stark Spider-Man fan. But, at the time when it mattered, I had, when 5-star rank 4 was the highest rank level available, I had a 5-star rank 4, I used Stark Spider-Man Alliance Force just like everybody else did. And, he went away and I was fine with it. The game had moved past Stark Spider-Man, he was left in the waste bins of history. And he never stopped talking about how good Stark Spider-Man is and how we should all be running him. And he still has. Swear to God, every third stream, and that's me being generous, every second stream, Spider-Man gets brought up, and I immediately roll my eyes because I can't take it anymore. It's gonna give me like a nervous breakdown soon. I'm just sick and tired of talking about this champion, and that person has legitimately made me hate this champion. Can't look at him the same way anymore. Whenever I look at Spider-Man, I hate him. That said, it is undeniable that at the moment he is one of the most potent tech attackers in the game. Most specific, he's very good for a lot of obviously story content and other piece of content, but his entire point 2 raising back to relevancy has been largely due to Battlegrounds, and because of it, people bring him in more so in other areas of the game too. And where is the matchup spreadsheet? I regret to inform you that he's one of the best champions in the entire game when it comes to matchups. Of all the relevant Battlegrounds fights, or most of the relevant Battlegrounds fights, in between Killmonger's, Korg's, Nick Fury's, Rintrah's, Doom's, Mephisto's, Domino's, Bishop's, things, all of the hardest fights that we most frequently do in this game, on the other hand, Spider-Man has one of the best matchup ratios. And the fact that he's also very fast in almost all of them makes him one of the best tech attackers in game. I mean, I can't say otherwise. It does. Really, really does. Now, there are obvious downsides. Starkhand Spider-Man, the fact that he's squishy, his playstyle might not behoove everybody. It's quite easy to make a mistake with him. All of those things matter. Therefore, ultimately, I'm not saying, as looking at that same matchup spreadsheet, for instance, Jugs matches up with slightly less champions. Like one less matchup he has, basically. But Jugs is much more tankier and easier and safer to play. Therefore, ultimately, Jugs is much more popular in Battlegrounds. And I think Jugs is a better Battlegrounds attacker. Similarly, like Sandman. Sandman's safe, but Sandman matches up very well with a ton of matchups. But he's just kind of too slow for a lot of them, and you would lose a lot of them on time. And, there are individual circumstances to this. Therefore, this spreadsheet is by no means some sort of ultimate, answer to which champion you should rank or something like that. But for skilled players He's a monster. He's a very, very good champion. If I, for instance, a good test is if you see an ascended version of that champion, are you likely to ban it? You know, pending there aren't like some more urgent 7-star increase to ban. And yeah, you know, when I match him or anybody else who I see start ascended Stark Spider-Man, I have an immediate urge to ban the champion because he's very, very lethal and very, very dangerous. Again, he doesn't exist as a 7-star. This ranking, you know, will inevitably go down unless he becomes a 7-star, because that is where we are moving. But at the same time, yeah, I mean, Stupid Spider is good, you know. Hate him is good. Okay, let's move on. Spot number 5. Spot number 5 is Warlock, and Warlock has kind of slowly been sliding down the tech list. And that's kind of unfortunate because he's one of my all-time favorite tech champions, but there is no question about it. We do see Warlock a lot everywhere. Warlock has some of the best power control in the game. But, well, again, Warlock kind of got hampered by, you know, a few things. Number one, the scoring change and him being a robot, not healing from willpower, relying on parrying a lot, and 7-stars coming out and inflicting more block penetration means you're not necessarily finishing fights with as much health as you otherwise would for Battlegrounds, so it's kind of less possible to win, you know, similar matchups with Warlock now due to those reasons. Cosmic class has been popping. Again, you know, in between Hulkling, Gallon, Hercules, and a handful of other Cosmic champions absolutely run through him, and them being present in most of the metas. You know, it is not as easy to trap opponents into like a Warlock trap or find matchups that, you know, he doesn't get nuked on. But ultimately, he's still there and everywhere. Ultimately, he's still in Battlegrounds. He can still easily catch you off guard on defense. He has been released as 7-star. He, you know, is getting those 7-star rank up materials. That means that his damage is coming up, and we are using him as a legitimate counter for a ton of things, not just mutant class. You can frequently use him for a ton of mystic champions, for instance, due to his power control and the lack of any expiring buffs. You can use him for, you know, again, different class matchups, primarily due to his phenomenal power control. Also in some sort of slower and trickier metas, you can easily go on like parry heavy and rely on tons of bleed damage and very low hit count, which can be super helpful. His defensive capabilities, he is still one of the best Alliance War champions in the game, in my opinion, because again, you can spend entire fights without ever allowing opponent to throw a special attack, especially when you pop on like a tech power back boost on this guy. Finishes fights like nobody's business. Insanely versatile. And again, Warlock has always been the story of a champion that just happened to be. There's nothing particularly amazing about Warlock until you start fighting champions with willpower, I would say. But even though there's nothing mega exceptional about the guy, he just seems to have the stuff that we need in between his immunities, again, bleed, access to shock, access to armor break, power control, heal control, and all of those are very, very relevant things. And he's still where he is because he's sufficiently effective at all of that stuff. And yeah, again, in Battlegrounds, he definitely has taken a little bit of a step back to some of the newer tech stars. We still see him a lot in Battlegrounds and everywhere else. Alliance War, he's still just as popular as ever. Questing situations, still just as popular as ever. So I still think Warlock well deserves his top 5 spot. And as I said in the beginning, I think that there is a significant level of top 5 tech champions and the rest of the tech champions. I think if I applied some sort of individual ranking systems here for tech, the videos would be top 5 and then like top 6 to 16, something like that. Because those are, in my opinion, kind of like different classes of champions almost. And Warlock belongs with the best of them. Right, let's move on. And spot number 4 goes to Shuri. Shuri's just been going from strength to strength to strength. It's kind of funny to think of Shuri as a champion that got released as a meme. Shuri legitimately got released as one of the worst champions Kawhi had made in a very long time. And pre-buff version of Shuri would still have done well in Necropolis, by the way, because, you know, you had time to ramp up there and those would be Everest fights. She was borderline unusable anywhere else. And as soon as Shuri got released, I immediately accented the fact that I love her kit. I hated her damage, hated the time it takes to build her up, but I loved her kit because she has unique qualities to her. And, you know, it is safe to say that I was justified in saying all of those things, and now everybody loves her. She's one of the most desired 7-stars in the game. And there's a very, very good reason for it. She's insanely capable, dual-purpose champion. She's the first champion in the game released where all of your attacks are non-contact, which means you can bypass a ton of negative consequences against plenty of champions, like, you know, at Tumas, for instance, and whatnot. Never make contact, never get damage back. That in itself is crazy good offensively. It's also crazy good defensively because it means you can never ever parry or re-parry Shuri. It's unique, and that makes her a lot harder. Defense, you know, problems go further with the fact that she has difficult to dex special attacks that take some time to execute, on top of the fact that if you will want to find an opening without intercepting her, you will often need to bait out a heavy attack. If she has 10 of her charges active on her, which means effectively if you have hit her 10 times, she will go untouchable, which means you will need miss counter as well for that, or you will need to wait, which stalls the fight out, which also often will mean that you need to take block damage baiting that heavy attack out to begin with. And, you know, we can go on. Her ability accuracy cannot be reduced, period, which is also a very unique thing, because most of the tech champions just have this line working against mutants, but she has it everywhere. So a lot of nodes that would mess with other champions don't mess with her. And, you know, that's phenomenal. Like, disorients, yeah, you can take slightly more block damage, but your parries will always work. You know, you're basically immune to concussions and stuff like that. So, yeah, no, Shuri is putting in work at the moment in every game mode, both offensively and defensively. Obviously, there are some downsides still. She still isn't, you know, the fastest tech champion. But I genuinely think there is an argument for her also to have the second or third spot. I do think there's an argument for Shuri being named the second or third best tech champion. I'm not going to be as bold to do so as of yet. But if I just looked at my personal opinion, I would probably put her in second spot. Because, again, all of those unique things about her, like one of the coolest things any champion has in the game, she has ability to choose whether she does or doesn't crit, and she can control it effortlessly, which was like demonstrated in Necropolis Captain Britain fight, where you do not want to crit. So you just never do, because she doesn't crit naturally. And you can, you know, immediately convert your crit charges into the shocks, and then you can leave it be, and you will never crit. Or, in longer fights, you will always crit, because you can spam your level 1, so you're going to get your crit charges, and you're going to have guaranteed crit type of champion. There's just so much to love about her kit. And yeah, again, she's not the fastest tech champion, for, let's say, Balron's purposes, but she's still fine when it comes to her offensive speed. And her offensive capabilities are more than enough everywhere else in the game. And again, she has defensive powers. Genuinely, I think, you know, I'd kind of want to put her in second place. The more I think about it, you know what? We're doing it. We're breaking the rules here. Shuri is going to be the second best champion. We're going to adjust that in the end. I'm putting Shuri as the second best tech champion right now. And again, part of the reason for that will be the fact that she does a ton of non-mutant matchups extremely well. Because where a lot of tech champions, you know, get supercharged specifically against mutants and then become somewhat average against the rest of the classes, Shuri doesn't really care who she fights too much. And, you know, you can easily use her, like, believe it or not, Shuri is an amazing Killmonger counter. Use that a lot. Shuri is a good, solid Ruinter counter, right? You can use Shuri against so many different random opponents from all of the classes. It's quite ridiculous. And yeah, and she has also defensive impact. No, I think I'm moving Shuri to second spot. Hey, let's move on spot number 3, and spot number 3 is Ghost. The tech queen for ages. Still amazing. Still does everything. Problem is, community doesn't want to do it. That's more or less the story of Ghost. I have heard countless stories about people taking up Ghost to rank 4 for a specific meta and then just not touching her. People taking Ghost to rank 5 for a specific thing and then not really using her. And that's kind of the thing with Ghost. Because if she's not synergized, with our current AI issues, it's just quite risky to play. She is. And if you're an exceptional Ghost player, I'm sure you can pull off a lot of things. But people have kind of chosen to use different methods. And whilst in theory, you get, again, I believe you can make an argument for her being the best tech champion if you're extremely, extremely proficient with her. There are definite already, counterpoints to that. Number one, community at large has definitely chosen not to follow that path. You see a lot less Ghost, in specifically, for instance, in Battlegrounds in most of the metas. She's still extremely phenomenal in Lions War, and we see a lot of that there, but part of that is the fact that you can adjust mastery specifically for her to supercharge her. You can give her the tech power back boost, you can give her the synergy, make her easier and safer to play, which you cannot do in Battlegrounds. But in Lions War, she's still one of the dominant forces. When it comes to questing, again, you can do insane things with her in questing content, but people just don't want to really bother with that anymore. Like if you have to change your mastery setup, or if you need to like bring in these synergy teams and then something goes wrong and you get immediately KO'd, people just tend to these days choose to bring in 3 or 4 champions that work by themselves. So that could be one of the reasons why she's not as popular. She's still extremely great. She's definitely significantly less popular. And another thing is that Ghost is inevitably suffering from years of Kabam slowing her down. That's just facts right there. Kabam has spent very, 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 very long time spamming armor breaks where armor breaks ought not be spammed. We have Cosmic Champions pulling armor breaks out of their rear ends for no reason at all whatsoever, only because Ghost exists in this game. Like there was a period of time when every new Cosmic Champion applied armor break to you even if you didn't get hit. Like, Angelus rework, be that Airwalker, or be that Wishnarkus, or something like that. It's just one of those things which inevitably does have consequences, right? Ultimately, again, I do think that for certain person, Ghost can easily be the best tech champion in the game still right now. For community at large, and also more specifically for competitive community, Ghost is not the top tech champion in the game. That is how I feel about it. Move on to number 2, and that's Nimrod. We can have the Ghost Nimrod debate yet again. I have had it several times in past on this channel. I don't want to revisit in its details, but ultimately, Nimrod's also kind of on a step back right now. He is. And the reason for it is because mutants suck. Or more specifically, this is the highest compliment, but also his ultimate downfall. Just because Nimrod exists, there's kind of like the beginning of end for mutant class. And as of right now, the mutant class has been ended. For most intents and purposes. There is another problem that is definitely coming for Nimrod, which makes me believe his ranking in the list is probably going to go down further. I wouldn't be surprised if the next time I rank champions, I place Nimrod in like 5th place or something. And again, the exact reason for it is whenever Kabam wants to make a new good mutant character now, they will need to protect that character from Nimrod. And we already see that happening. Onslaught has all the abilities to basically counter whatever Nimrod does, and Nimrod's going to be utterly inefficient against Onslaught. I can promise you, we're going to get more of those mutants. Because that's kind of like a catch-22 situation. Where if they keep doing that, Nimrod is going to be significantly less valuable and forgotten and unused. If they don't keep doing that, the new champions are going to be immediately forgotten about because they're going to get nuked and by Nimrod and not taken really seriously. So one of these two things is going to happen. Either the new mutant character is going to be immediately invalidated, or Nimrod's going to get invalidated over time because Kabam has to counter Nimrod in the mutant class, because that is how fast he destroys all the mutants. And the deciding factor here is quite simple. New champions make them money, Nimrod doesn't. So you can expect most of the new, or significant portion of the new mutant characters, have abilities that directly counter Nimrod. There's going to be like shock immunity, or there's going to be some insane energy resistances, or some stuff like that. Basically, where Nimrod just doesn't function nowhere near as well as he could. We're going to get more bishops and onslaughts and stuff like that. That said, I still have reverence for what Nimrod achieved in the game. And again, completely invalidating an entire class of champions, aside from like one relevant champion in that class being Bishop, which made, completely useless them for Alliance for defense, which made completely useless them for Balgron's defense, which, made many of the questing fights a complete joke in questing scenarios. But he's headed down. Nimrod also doesn't exist at the 7th star, even though in his case I don't think that's really much of an issue. Especially at the moment, given how well he counters mutant. But, I don't think that's all he's good for at all. Nimrod still has a ton of solid matchups outside of the mutant class because of, his tankiness, the debuffs that he applies, his power control. He has still very, very decent damage. It energizes potent, his access to unstoppable, his ability to, purify the regenerations, because not only mutants have them. There's still a lot in his kit. I guess the best way to discuss it right now is I already inevitably see Nimrod less than I saw him half a year ago. I don't necessarily expect to see more of him within the next half a year. So that's where we stand with Nimrod right now. And the top tech champion? Who can guess it? The one champion that remains at the moment, I think, is Future Antman. Future Antman is fulfilling much of the same matchups in competitive circles that Nimrod can. There is a bit of a shift. Future Antman's better against Havoc and Bishop. Nimrod's better against Domino, effectively. When it comes to the rest of the stuff, they actually have very different abilities, but they tend to do similar champions for the most part. With the exception that Future Antman also does something like Korg better, because Korg's shock immune. Future Antman does Thing extremely well because his damage, again, not energy damage, it's burst damage that Thing's protection doesn't really react too much. And yeah, I guess you can say, because Nimrod has already trashed mutants, and because mutants generally suck right now, Future Antman is better. Like right now, realistically, if somebody asks me who I should rank 5 or who I should ascend, is it Future Antman or is it Nimrod? It's Future Antman, because Future Antman will do more of what's currently needed and also good on defense. Future Antman, Ascended Future Antman especially, is one of the most annoying champions you can potentially fight right now. In between his glancing ability, in between his ability to mess with your power, in between his, special attacks that aren't like super easy to fully dex either, in between you not being able to finish your combos, that not being able to, fight as you often normally would with many champions. It all just seems to come together to kind of mess with you just enough for you to be completely screwed. And then he has managed to obviously protect himself from Galen, which obviously means he has less viable cosmic counters to worry about. He still obviously gets shredded by Hercules and Hulkling and CGR, but at least, unlike Nimrod, let's say, he doesn't have to worry about Galen. And yeah, the fact that he does more matchups that are currently more frequent because not many people are running that many mutants. He does the thing, he can do the Korg, he can do plenty of other fights that Nimrod can't because he doesn't rely on a specific type of debuff, and his damage is direct damage. Also, his power control is more potent than Nimrod's at the moment. And ultimately, I guess this can be like a similar debate again, which champion has had more impact on the game or which champion is better, let's say in between Kate and Photon, where Kate is definitely better offensively, but Photon, I feel like, has had overall bigger impact in the game because Photon is very, very good on offense, maybe not as good, but she's absolutely insane on defense. It's kind of similar here, where Nimrod significantly worse on defense than future Antman, and Nimrod, however, is significantly better at absolutely nuking down mutant characters specifically. But because mutant is such a weak class, comparatively speaking, and not really present in much of the endgame, the matchups that future Antman does just seem to be more important right now. So I would say that, again, right now, future Antman is better investment than Nimrod. I also think that moving forwards, future Antman will likely be more capable than Nimrod, with the current game trends kind of proving it. For instance, Kabam made sure to prove Onslaught against Nimrod, but they didn't against Future Antman. Future Antman is objectively one of the best counters to Onslaught, because you can continuously control Onslaught's power. You never really have to bait out special attacks. You don't have to worry about the reversed controls or all of those nasty debuffs, and you can still nuke him just fine, just like you would most other champions. That is something, Nimrod can't do or many other tech champions can do. And yeah, I do think his overall stock is on up and up and up. The problem, the elephant in the room with future Antman, is that we don't have a 7-star. If 7-star doesn't exist, it's only a matter of time till somebody else is going to come. Only a matter of time till Shuri or some other new champion bypasses him. Not right now, because you can ascend him and that 6-star rank 2 level. Maybe not even the next ranking video. But I'd be shocked that within 1 year's time from now, future Antman is still the top champion unless he gets released as a 7-star. So, it'll be interesting to see. Alright, so let's get back to it. Let me know what you guys think about my list and my reasoning for or against it. As I said, here's a new one, but I'm swapping it up. I told you I'm swapping it up. We're going to be doing... This is going for Ghost. Going to Nimrod. Going to Shuri. There we go. There we go. That is the list right now. Again, very tricky to make. I fully accept that tech list can look wildly different, because there are just so many things to consider right now. Again, lesser champions being more popular due to the better champions or slightly better champions not being out as 7-stars is definitely a huge factor. Kind of depends how you look at it. There's going to be a lot of anecdotal preference. Like, for a lot of people, starting on SpiderMan doesn't belong on this list because he's squishy and they hate him. But I can't any longer deny, how capable he is. So yeah, very tricky list to make. I look forward to hearing what you think about the list that I have made. See you soon, guys. Bye. Hello there, guys, and welcome back to the channel. So we have all the information